Hello and welcome to the Big Debate. I'm your host, Igoma Gabriel, and we are glad that you join us for this debate. Thank you for the interest you've shown in the Big Debate, because when we took a break, you kept asking when we're returning. And tonight, we return with the biggest discussion in the country. You've seen it on media, both social media and mainstream media, the issue of torture and the human rights situation in the country. Our laws define torture as an act or an omission by which severe pain and suffering is inflicted on a person, whether physically or mentally, and this has got to be intentional. Well, the government has been on record as saying torture is not a policy. The president has guided that even when you obtain evidence by using torture, that evidence is not admissible. And yet, torture has persisted. Media has been awash with people claiming that in the hands of security operatives, they have been tortured. Why does this problem persist, and what solutions can be put in place? That's what we discuss on the Big Debate. Let's meet our panelists.
Mathias Mpuga is the leader of opposition in the 11th Parliament after having replaced Betty Awolo-Chan of the Forum for Democratic Change Party FDC. Mpuga, who joined the National Unity Platform in 2020, also serves as Deputy President NUP, Buganda Region, the Member of Parliament of Nyendo Mukungwe, and former MP Masaka Municipality. Mpuga is a seasoned politician, lawyer, and teacher by profession. Mpuga was the architect of several opposition-led campaigns against the operation by the state, and these include the Walk to Work campaign in 2011 and the Activists for Change A4C, in which he condemned the police's high-handedness in the way officers were arresting the people who participated in the demonstrations. On the floor of Parliament as the leader of opposition, he has outrightly condemned gross human rights violations, acts of torture, and continued detention of members of the National Unity Platform Party. Mpuga holds a bachelor's degree in education and a Bachelor of Laws degree from Makerere University. Major Paula Awich is a former child soldier that was rehabilitated through formal education from primary school to secondary school up to law school to become a leading child's rights advocate. He holds a Bachelor of Laws degree from Makerere University, a diploma in legal practice, certificate in parliamentary legal procedures and draftsmanship, a certificate in parliamentary legal procedures and draftsmanship, and a diploma in HIV and AIDS counseling. He was elected as Vice Chairperson of the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child in the year 2007 and was elected by the state parties to CRC to the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child in the year 2005. He has authored several books on human rights. Major Wich is an incumbent member of the United Nations Committee of Experts in Geneva, a member of the Global Science for Peace, a member of the focal group which liaises with the UNCRC experts and African Committee of Experts on the Rights of Welfare. He is also a legal advisor to the government on matters of child rights and also a senior NRM cadre. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel tonight.
There you are. Those are our panelists for the discussion today, but we would like to hear from you as well. So even as you tweet, or if you're using Facebook, remember to use the hashtag #TheBigDebate so that we can find your comment. Major Awich, I'd like to begin with you. The image of Uganda has taken quite a beating these last couple of days because of the media, both social media and mainstream media, covering people who say they've been tortured in the hands of uniformed people or state operatives. What exactly is going on? And this I say because the current government says it does not use torture.
Well, thank you so much, viewers. It is true the image has been bad in the last few days, and it's a matter of concern. I like to say straight away that I work at the movement secretariat, and the party is the one which goes to the people with a manifesto to win elections. And when it wins election, it forms a government. So whatever happens in government is a great concern, both to the party and to the government. And therefore, I thank you for inviting me to share this, and also to be honored by attending the same session with the leader of opposition. Our understanding is that the leader of opposition is a leader in waiting, is the alternative president.
Alternative government, yes.
Yes. And in the protocol is I up there. I was in Umbale on Sunday, and we had the 6th celebration of NRA. And in the program, the leader of opposition was slated just before the prime minister. So
was he there?
He wasn't there, but he's on the protocol. And that's a national protocol anyway. You can't wish it away. The leader of opposition is a government in waiting, and it's a leader in waiting. It's just an alternative. So I'm honored to be with him to discuss this very important thing. Now, this negative publicity worries all of us. Nobody condones torture. Torture should be condemned in its totality. So it is not a government position. Even in our manifesto, under governance, we talk about it clearly, that governance, you cannot talk of a good governance when the rights and the freedoms of people are not guaranteed and respected. So maybe at some later stage, I may come to know measures that has been put in place, but to be short and brief to the point, the press, social media, and otherwise has put the outcry. It is sad, it is bad, but I like to emphasize the position that government does not condone torture. And you indicated that evidence attained from torture cannot be sustained. I'm a lawyer, the leader of opposition is a lawyer. It is actually more acceptable if somebody said in drunkardness, that evidence can instead be taken than the one of torture. For example, if I got drunk and I said I killed Okello, it is more of evidential value than somebody torturing me and I said I killed Okello. So it's a wastage of time. So nobody should even think about it, and nobody should think it is a modus operandi, and we don't get anything about it.
Major, which people are not just thinking about it, it's actually happening. So is saying it is not a government policy enough, because the practice shows otherwise?
Yes, the practice shows, but let me now go into the realm of saying government in its philosophical and policy standing is against torture. Right from NRA days of the Bush, I've been fairly long enough in NRA. I was a Kadogo in NRA. I know it well, that torture was not a policy, and it is not. So even when NRA emphasized on the 10th of October 1995 to UPDF, it continues the same. Now, I like to put a few things that shows that the commitment was there. One, the constitutional provision, Article 44, provides a non-derogatable rights. In other words, these are rights that under no circumstance can you move away. What are those? Slavery. Never can anybody make somebody slave, including Museveni cannot make Tumusime or Pay or Kui a slave. Two, habeas corpus. If somebody is lost and know his whereabouts is not known, you can go to court and say, bring his body here. Corpus actually doesn't mean corpse, a dead person, but the body. That's why you have body corporate, body corpus. 3, a right to be heard. Under no circumstance should you not hear anybody. Then the 4th one is torture. In the past, before the constitutional dispensation, if Okello stole a chicken and the magistrate presides over a case, the magistrate could actually order the local Gomorrah Askari to give canes. These days, not even the court of law has a right of torture. Not even the Supreme Court can order beating. Nobody, absolutely no. So these are rights that you can not derogate from. Remember, these rights does not even include right to food. It does not even include right to life. So this shows the commitment government is making. 2, Human Rights Commission was put in place, okay, to carry out the protection of human rights. 3, there's an act called the Anti-Torture Act. The beauty of Anti-Torture Act is that there's a provision which says...
The Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act.
You can no longer now hide. Any state actors cannot hide under the provision that sue Attorney General. In the past, if a police went for operation and broke your leg, and you sue the police, it would say sue Attorney General. But these days, the law is saying you are personally liable. So, and other international instruments, Uganda is bound by UDR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Convention on Civil and Political, Cultural and Economic, Convention on the Rights of the Child, Convention against Torture, Convention against elimination, discrimination against women, migrant, all human rights instruments. Right. So now, I'm trying to illustrate a point that if all these commitments are there, what would make somebody think that it's the same government that goes behind doors and be against it? No. Right. It wouldn't have wasted time on this. And again, if you're assessing a government, you don't assess on individual occurrence. You assess government on measures in place, policies in place, laws in place.
Regardless of whether these policies are followed or not.
No, but this policy should be detailed enough to accommodate monitoring and evaluation. It must be holistic enough.
All right.
It must be holistic enough.
All right, let's hear from Honorable Mpuga, his initial thoughts, considering that he's had the benefit of listening to, your initial thoughts on the issue and, stating why the government should not, be judged this harshly in relation to what's going on in the country as far as torture and observance of human rights is concerned. Honorable Mpuga?
Gabri, initially, I would like to appreciate you for inviting me. My very first time I made an appearance.
Yes, it is, and we're glad
that grand program.
Yes,
and CTV in particular. I would like to congratulate you for joining the media airwaves to share our views with the public. I would also like to welcome my brother, Major Wichi. I've known and heard about him for some time, since my university days as a young Democrat. I've had him active back and forth. So it's a great honor to share the same platform and pick his novel views on the issues that are trending in the country. That said, Gabri, we need to appreciate the bigger debate. And the benefit I have, not just as a LOP, because my career in public life has been an evolution. As young as 19, when I first joined university for my first degree, I was an activist, and I can enumerate to you acts of torture against political activists as early as the 1990s. And I can enlist for you victims of this torture. I can tell you people who lost lives, people who were tortured and lost manhood. I mean, probably the distinction today is that there is total proliferation of the media. And whoever has a small phone and a camera is a journalist, can publish, can transmit, can share. And I'll give you an example. I remember in 1996, immediately after the presidential elections, we had a retreat as young Democrats in Nkozi University to think through the challenges of losing a brutal election. And we're supposed to be there for 3 days. We spent a single day. The following day, we were attacked and beaten badly.
It was 96?
Yeah, 96.
Soon after the promulgation of the 1995 Constitution.
Yeah, after the Semogere versus 7 election. We were beaten like cattle. We were chased. We left our every belonging in the university. We were chased up to Kayawe and told to find our way. I will never forget that. We were brutalized people.
Did you establish who chased and brutalized you?
I know that was a group then, led by may he rest in peace, Major Mayombo then was a major. We were terrorized, we were beaten, people had their lips broken. Life went on. But that continued through. We had an episode in Tororo, we had one in Imbarara, same people, same man of beating. That was 96. Do you want me to share the aftermath of 201 elections, 206? So this has been with us. And because it never received the kind of publicity it received today, it became a culture. And because it became a culture, now people would get out with it, get promoted, they became so wealthy, and because they were doing this and they thought they were deepening the state. And for me, Gabriel, that is the narrow debate. The bigger debate for me, at which I want to really share a platform with my brother, is who is in charge? I mean, who is in charge? Because it's not the first time that torture is being reported. You were a senior journalist and a lawyer. Do you recollect the Kawesa torture victims? The suspects, the Kawesa suspects? Do you remember the episodes of Nalfenya? You remember the mayor of somewhere?
Kamwenge, was it?
I think Kamwenge. Remember those episodes? So there's nothing new. It's become a culture. And the question of the day, what happened to the spirit of the country? And who is in charge? And I think what we need to dissect as interested parties, political, civic, whatever you want to call it, including cultural leaders, probably including witch doctors, that is it that the deep state usurped the powers of the public state? Okay? Because when powers of the public state are usurped, because he's been discussing eloquently the role of the public state. He's explaining the laws. We have very superb laws on anti-torture legislations and international conventions to which we subscribe. And we are very quick to append signature and domesticate. Now, if you have all those, and you have episodes of torture dating years, generations, dating decades, so how did we allow this to evolve? Right. To the extent that it no longer sends a chill down anybody's spine until it became so unbearable, and probably until people more known, were affected, and that the international community has joined the fray to condemn. So the debate should be now who takes responsibility. And that's what I said, that if you're the president and the commander-in-chief, do not join Major Wichi in lamentation. Your space is action. Your space is to command, to order. Has that taken place? I'm very sure today you followed the statement by the Minister of Information.
I happened to be at the media center as he delivered that statement.
Pathetic.
Some interesting thoughts around what the opposition is doing, but okay, hopefully we'll
very
get to that.
pathetic. I wish you share it. You give space for that to assess what is said. And I want
We
to pick
actually
the
had
thought.
invited him for the talk show, but he had
I
no
would,
prior
I would have
engagement.
loved to share a platform with him to tell us. You know what he said? That this one Masereka is a suspect ADF rebel collaborator. In other words, saying, as long as you are suspected to be an ADF collaborator, they can cut off your feet. For him, that was okay. I actually thought he was out of his mind. I don't know whether journalists were able to follow up him to explain whether that what he was saying was in his right sense of mind, state of mind. A minister of information and national guidance was on media informing the world that as long as you are an ADF suspect, that was okay. Nobody's questioning it.
Okay. Major
So who is in charge is the question.
All right, we're going to come to the question of who is in charge, but you know, that point where you've left off, and part of what has made, you know, the conversation on torture come to the fore again are these two individuals, you know, Masereka, who is a member of the National Unity Platform. He is, you know, he's a representative there in Kasese, and then Kakwenza, the novelist, who we've also heard that today has found a way of leaving the country. Well, those two instances, or those two individuals, the Minister of Information found it, you know, prudent to come out and inform the country on, you know, what was going on with those two cases. And the leader of opposition says the explanation given to the country is not satisfactory.
Okay. Now, first of all, it is good that three of us are lawyers. I really needed to look at a text of what he says. If I'm to go by the paraphrasing,
I can actually ask my team to get parts of,
so.
you know, the video of what the minister did say.
As we wait, but I can say this, if I go by what the leader of opposition is saying, is that I want to reiterate my position by saying Article 44 is non-derogatable, okay? Even if somebody kills 10 people, the option is not to torture the killer. The option is to take him according to due process of the law.
Yes.
You can hang him
And
if
that
you want
point
to
has
hang
been
him,
made, but
okay? You
we
can
are
hang
seeing...
him. You can hang him. So, I, as a government, there shouldn't be a position of any defense as to why somebody is tortured. Even if he killed 10 people, you have no right to say because he has killed 10, then you torture him. No. You have the due process. You can hang him by court of law. Said you are sentenced to death for killing 10 people, but no torture. So, but I need to get the text of what the minister was saying.
I think for the benefit of our viewer, it's important that we read the actual text from the Constitution, which goes as follows. No person shall be subjected to any form of torture, cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. It does not give
actually read the
an
heading.
exception.
Read the heading.
No, I'm not reading it from the Constitution. I'm reading it
the
from
heading is
a few
saying
notes that are non-derogable rights.
You see, it lists other rights, but these are rights
and you did
can't
mention them
stamp on.
earlier on. Yes.
So I don't see. I need to read the minister in context. But what I want to say here is that even if somebody killed 10 people, you have no right to torture that person. You can take him to court, sentence him to death, hang him, okay, but not torture. I said even the courts of law has no right. But then I want to comment on what Honorable said about a gap. Honorable seems to raise a question of who is in charge. And it is, as he puts it, a big debate. It needs to be discussed. My answer to that query is that power belongs to the people in this country. And power belongs to the people. We go regularly to seek the mandate of the people. And government has got, this current government has got the mandate from 2021 to 2026. So power belongs to the people. Two, is that the government is in charge, the president is in charge. Now, and he's a very strong president. So there's no doubt about who is in charge. We are not doubting where power comes from. We should, however, say, if there are evidence of torture in this, among the state actors, the problem doesn't need a nuclear engineer. It's that there are actors within the state system. Actors who should be brought to law, because the law is clear that government doesn't condone. So if there are actors in there, then those actors are the ones who should be brought. To me, maybe we need to emphasize also the procedure of complaint mechanism.
You see, what you're submitting right now actually adds weight to the argument that the leader of opposition is making. Because when he asks who is in charge, what is expected is not questions from the government, but answers. Because if these people were presented in court and presented by state, institutions, they had these people and therefore should account for what happened to these people in the period when they had them. If they received these people in that state, it should be stated clearly.
No, his query is, you have the state and the public policy, according to what I had stated about the laws and policies in place, how comes that there are still elements of torture?
Yes, that was one.
So now I am saying
one aspect of it.
Yes,
and he is here. He can actually elaborate on that.
Yeah, because
so that we get a clear response to it.
That's why my answer is that there's no doubt about authority. We are not living in one of the states where you call a failed state. We are not living in a situation where there's anarchy. We are not living in a state, we are living in a normal state where the power belongs to the people. The mandate is got from the people. The president is in place as chief executive. But we are not living in this ideal situation, this utopian situation. Utopia, as you know, Mr. Owen, an Englishman, once thought of a country in an island like Kalanga, where there was peace and everything was all right. And then actually Owen was the first to start a nursery school, this early childhood education. So Owen thought that was that ideal. So now, even if you have a government, even if you get the power from the people, ideally things should move on. But you get challenges inside there where you find cadres, the actors do mistakes. That is why even in the law is saying, should you do it, you are personally liable. So the legislators, where the honorable is, presupposes that we do not live in that ideal situation of Owen. That is why the actors who make mistake does not therefore deny the fact that there's somebody in charge. It does not deny the fact that we have power from the people.
Then I believe the question to be asked.
It doesn't bring the fact that we are in a failed state.
Major, which the question to be asked is, what have the people in charge then done
about
the situations you have just elaborated? Because
about
if it's not a failed
that
state,
is what I said.
Yes.
I said, if we have actors who have done this, and even the lawmakers had envisaged.
Yes.
You see, if there was not envisage of this, if it was not envisaged that while we presume to live in a flow normally, other actors may come. That is why the law was put some time back, that should it arise, it should be dealt with. Now, that is what brought me to what complaint mechanism do we have? Because a victim should either bring a civil claim about this torture, which can go to human rights court or even to ordinary courts, or it could even report a criminal case perpetuated on him. So the issue now is, what complaint mechanism do we have? Right. Do the people have it? The people don't know.
I want to bring Honorable Mpuga back, but very briefly. So if the people do not take the civil or the criminal route, those in charge will let these things they have seen just go. Is that what you're saying?
No, it will not be let go. I know there are procedures that can, a state will always move on a motion of its own. Okay. For example, where there's an outcry, no doubt there will be a motion of its own. And the president has always done it time and again. So if there is no complainant for a civil claim for a violation. And they are, by the way, Human Rights Commission has billions of shillings they have awarded on this kind of cases. The kind of cases where police and the army has done this, Human Rights Court has awarded damages. Ordinary courts have awarded damages. Officers have been arrested. So similarly, in a case like this, if the victims doesn't raise a complaint for either civil or criminal, of course at an appropriate time, the state will move on a motion of its own to find out.
All right. Honorable Mpuga,
well, I'm at pains trying to find ways of coming to terms with my brother and his position. I want to appreciate him that from the onset, he said this is unacceptable. And I want to invite him to keep that tone. And when I raised the question that who is in charge, my intention is that we do not even expect anybody to ask victims to run around looking for their tormentors. I spent over an hour with Kakwenza in prison, sharing with me his ordeal, where he was at Chigo, and he told me how he was arrested, handcuffed and blindfolded throughout. He was only given, the blindfold was only removed to eat something in the dark and to forcefully take medicine. After that, again handcuffed and blindfolded. And we're asking this person to identify his tormentors. And his tormentors had the courage of dumping him at an unfortunate court with a questionable judicial officer without his attorneys to enter plea and get remanded. Driven again by tormentors, dumped in a prison. What are we asking of citizens? And that's the question I'm still raising. At the end of the day, has the official public state been usurped? And therefore, there's an understate, which we call the deep state in statecraft, that has taken over and therefore is really doing things the way it desires, and nobody can summon the courage from the public state, led by the president, to ask questions. That's what I'm saying. If you are a state actor at the level of minister, president, you have no space asking of victims to identify their tormentors. It's actually like accusing victims of being responsible for their troubles, which is very unfortunate. And this never builds the spirit of the country. When these matters arise elsewhere, in probably democracies we admire, when these matters arise, they are humbling public matters. And everyone will humble themselves to unite the country in saying this should never happen again in our midst. We do not remind people of existing written laws. This is about humanity. It's about our feelings about each other. It's about how we desire to be treated, even when there's no written law. It's about how we feel about each other, even when there are no contests. Can I tell you, the kind of mistreatment, because you have only seen Masereka. When Masereka and others were picked, as NUP, we've been carrying out a nationwide evaluation, a post-election evaluation. And there are meetings at every district. And he was in such a meeting. They were followed severally. And they were telling us that when we try to see to discuss, we are being followed. We don't know what's going on. So when you see a minister of government tormenting a victim of torture for his political views, and they started branding them, what you do now, you see, when they were torturing the suspects for the murder of Afande Kawesa, General Kaihura thought that because the killing of Afande Kawesa brought the country to standstill, He thought he was within the right to torture suspects. And he got away with it. He has never been charged for presiding over torture. We have seen people who have commanded CMI and other torture chambers, torture agencies being promoted. It is unacceptable that the official public state was usurped.
So one of the questions
toppled,
that has been asked,
and therefore there is a cabal that are commandeering the unofficial state, the deep state, and therefore the likes of my brother here, very calm and decent, must appear publicly to seem and appear apologetic while they go away with what they're doing.
Honorable Mpuga, a question that was actually asked by the minister today and that Major Awich is asking is, then why haven't we seen these people use the provisions of the law to charge or to, sue these people in their individual capacity, even in relation to the names that were submitted by yourself on the floor of Parliament? Why you do not have, like, police, case numbers in relation to the same people that you say are missing? Because now it's starting to look like, and at least this is an argument that has been made, that the opposition is using what's going on for political gain.
Gabriel, I have a lot of respect for that gentleman, the minister. And I want to restate here that I have no idea what is happening to him. When I submitted the list of citizens that are missing, it even included telephone contacts of family members and their physical and telephone locations. And I don't know whether the minister has been in exile or is so consumed with the power and is not even able to see. You, a smart journalist, go to Parliament and ask for the Hansard of that day. You get everything there. Secondly, the first list I submitted was in August last year. The minister is asking me in February the following year whether I have police numbers. I raised the same question. Who is in charge? So a reader comes to you and says, these citizens are missing. So you return after 6 months to ask whether I have information about these people. If these fellows cared, they actually know that families have been looking for their loved ones. They come to us and report. I had a meeting in the Speaker's office with the Minister of Security and the Minister of State for Internal Affairs. I handed over these lists the second time. Forget about what I handed over on the floor of Parliament. And I find this square. And for me and my sense of decency, clearly it's a matter of complicity. The minister is part of this complicity. He's part of this criminal gang and is out to speak anything. You can't say that. Because what will happen if I brandish the hazard in his face and he has all these records?
All right,
let's go and say that he was demented.
Let's take another part of that, because the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture law that we talk about. So can we clear
that the minister doesn't know what he's talking about? That doesn't come back.
Well, the thing is, if we had the minister here, because when he came to Media Center... You invite me back
tomorrow and let him come here. I'll come with a copy of the Hansard.
At Media Center, he did have a document, and unfortunately...
Was that my document?
None of us present had seen the previous document.
So they should have respect for citizens. And he should be told in no uncertain terms that they should have respect for citizens. You see, we are political leaders, and we must be careful. When people are concerned about their safety, when people are asking questions about life, about safety, you do not brandish politics in their faces. I know how to play politics, and smartly.
Major Awich, I know that you want to come in, but for the benefit of those that did not watch, because this was also featured in our news, the PM edition here on CTV, let's just play a little bit of what the minister said at the Media Center earlier today.
The whole barrel of torture, of missing persons, is just meant to divert the attention of Ugandans on the issue, on the resolve of government, fight ADF, the UPDF going into Congo to flush out the ADFs and that campaign to flush out ADF shall remain.
All right, that's the bit that we have where he is actually stating that, you know, when they came and arrested Masereka, they did find him with a few other people, and when his phone was searched, messages were found that showed that he was in contact with the ADF, threats to the life of the CDF, and a number of other issues. And that's why he's saying, you know, the sovereignty of the state has to be...
He's not just saying, he's justifying torture of Masereka. That, you know, they found something in his phone, and he is a minister of government. So what's the difference between what he's saying and the complicity in this crime?
Well,
I'll just say that in the same press conference, he did say what Major Wich has said, what the president said. It's not a policy of government to use torture.
Again, I ask the same question. Is the public state in charge? Who is in charge?
And hopefully,
so
by the end of this show, we can get an answer to that question. And Major Wich, I hope that you can have an attempt to who is in charge, because we haven't gotten a direct answer.
I've said it, and I will say it maybe in another words. But it is unfortunate the minister's recording, maybe it started earlier. I didn't hear him explicitly saying it was because US ADF then
Major just believe. I actually left home after listening to that.
But all I want to say, and I have said it clearly, that this same constitution, Museveni passed it in Fort Fulton on independence celebration 1995. So by the time he passed it, he knew what it contained, and he abides by that. So under no circumstance should you torture. Okay? Under no circumstance. And I'm saying it here because I'm saying the provision of the law and the philosophy of the government. Honorable prefers to call it that I'm being apologetic. Well, you know, to apologize, it means you have accepted a wrong somewhere, and you say, I'm sorry for this wrong. But I'm saying this is a position. And we have said this, even in the army training programs, like in Singo. Do you know that in the army training programs, human rights is incorporated into the syllabus? Human rights per se, and the international, what you call the law of war, that is the 3 Geneva Conventions. The 3 Geneva Conventions, what you call the war
international
of law.
humanitarian
law.
Yeah.
So, what I'm saying is actually, for good diction, for choice of words, is really not an apology. But I'm stating a position that is well known to government, and a position that will be known to government, and a position that government stands by, and which any government officer, including ministers, should know that you have non-derogatable rights. That you can't. And these rights, the four, does not even include right to food. It does not even include right to life. It is torture, habeas corpus, fair hearing, torture. You cannot touch it.
But Major, be very clear, the non-lawyers. You're saying it does not even include the right to life. So what are you trying to mean?
Yes.
No, he's saying non-derogable because the right to life may
emphasize the importance of these rights. I'm trying to say it is so important that you cannot deviate from it. For example, right to life. Right to life, you can be sentenced to court by high court.
That's what I wanted you to say as a lawyer.
Okay.
Do not speak like a pedestrian.
Yes, you can be sentenced. No. I am saying
all right.
The four rights excludes right to life. In other words, right to life can be touched.
And I think the three of us
right to life can
only be taken away
after a certain process has been followed.
And yet this one, under no circumstance should it be touched.
And for the right to life,
yes,
you have the opportunity to appeal until the highest court.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Courts can tamper with. Remember, I said,
and now there's consensus on that.
Stole chicken.
There is consensus on that, and then there's consensus on the right to freedom from torture being non-derogable.
Yes.
Therefore, we go back to the question. You have not said that there has been no torture. So the question is, knowing that this is a non-derogable right, and going by your statement, the government is in charge, what has been done in the instances where torture has actually happened?
You see, we started from a premise that the media has been awash with this, and what is the image of government. I said the media has been awash with it, and it is bad. I did not say,
Yes,
for example, that I did not say that Mr. X was tortured in CMI, or Mr. Y was tortured in Tinder, or Mr. Z was tortured in Makindi. No, we started from a basis of what the press is saying, and I'm saying with that basis alone, it's bad.
All right.
So we need to go,
has
it occurred or has it not occurred? But even then, we even if we don't go into the details of whether it occurred or not, it's yet enough for us to debate whether torture is a good thing or is a bad thing. We are saying it is not. It is not a good thing.
All right.
Without going into acceptability, the detail, but we're saying even this media alone is enough for us to talk.
All right.
But it's not a confession.
Using the two examples, Kakwenza and Masereka, they are on record, and if the technical team is ready, you can just play for us what Masereka says he went through, so that, as we ask what has been done, it's a little, clearer what we're asking about.
The matter against the government of Uganda, and most importantly against Major General Abel Kandiho, who was the commandant of that institution at that time. He was the commandant of that institution at all the times that Mr. Masereka was unlawfully detained and tortured. Port will send out a strong message that torture is criminal, and hold not only the state but the individual officers who do this, who continue to do this, accountable.
Then on Saturday, early in the morning, they went to my place for a search. After searching, they took me to Kasese Central Police Station, where they detained me for some hours. It was around 2. They transferred me to Kampala. When we reached Busega, they put a hood on me. They drove me to an unknown place, which I could not identify.
He says he was taken to the chieftainess of military intelligence headquarters in Imbuya, where he claims to have...
They called me for interrogation. That's when they tortured me. They started the torture. The following day, again, they called me for interrogation. Still, they tortured me. They could ask me about the plans of NUP, about what we are discussing with the Secretary General, about what we are discussing with the Secretary General, about the funders of NUP.
All right, this being a person who was in custody of state agencies, and he actually goes to court and says these things, is there anything that can be juxtaposed with what we have seen of the state either accepting, denying, or saying these are things that they are going to follow up on? I think that's the kind of action that's being asked, about or for.
I had said earlier, and I continue to say, that in this circumstance, if the victims has not raised a complaint of a civil matter, and if the victim has not raised a concern of a criminal matter, which is difficult, like Honorable said, because if you know you are arrested by the state, it would be rather difficult to go across the counter of police, the police counter, and again report the same. I find it difficult. Now, I had said earlier that it's high time that the state moves on a motion of its own. Okay, we don't need to rely on the victims now, because this is a matter of public importance. It has occurred, and I should be made to believe that by now other actors have taken up. So it is very proper and fitting that a state should move on a motion of its own to find out this, because the victim is saying he was taken to police. So if the arresting officers were not state persons, there is no way he would have gone to police, unless he's telling a lie. But if it is true and Kasese police has a record, no ordinary civilian can arrest you and take you to police. So that already gives the credence that it is true there were state actors. And if it is that true, I want to say that the state needs to strengthen its mechanism in that while the victims have a right to raise complaint, the state should also move on a motion of its own for such matter. And as I say,
and I think that's why Honorable Mpuga is uncomfortable and asking who is in charge, because if the state is in charge, why are they reactionary? Why is it that they are responding? When you're in charge, you're the one directing. You're the one controlling the narrative. You're not reacting. Because now it looks like they've been pushed to do something.
No, I said this, and I don't know whether I can say it in another word. I said, the state doesn't operate in that utopian way. And that is why it is manifested in the many years when the laws were being made. Because the many years back, they knew as you continue recruiting soldiers, as you continue recruiting police, as you continue recruiting people in the intelligence, you will be bound in the course of operation to have this. Okay? That is why many years behind, the laws said, should you in future, 10 years, 20 years from now, get excited and do this, this is the law.
All right.
If it wasn't envisaged that such situation would arise, the law wouldn't have been made like that. But the law knew that much as you prevent torture, inside actors will do this. But that is not to say that the state didn't know. I mean, the state has no capacity or has no direction or there's a vacuum. No.
All right. Honorable Mpuga, there are a number of things you wanted to respond to. If you could, in a few minutes, we will be going for a break.
I'm glad my brother is now trying to understand the context of my discomfort. And that's why I said that when you are in charge of the state, the space for lamentation and asking victims to find their own justice does not lie in your space. Whereas the victim has recourse to the civil proceedings against individuals, the state must criminally try the actors. I mean, he's ably enumerated his journey from Kasese to a police station where he was taken, a search was made, I don't know, on his orders, then brought, then tortured, then, you see, we were called when he was at Chireka, where the same state that had tortured him out of its own volition decided to offer, to give him a bond. And you see, to appear anywhere, attempting to tell that same victim to find his way is to say, this is what we are, you do what you want to do, without a doubt. So we can take you all the way from Kasese, take you to Mbuya, torture you, take you to Chireka, find your way. He had to borrow a phone, I don't know from who, initially called the Secretary General. After so many weeks of search and raising alarms at every press conference, we were asking for the whereabouts of this, our chairperson. I raised the same matter on the floor of Parliament in January. His name and 3 others, I raised some, they answered. And the ministers were there looking at me like a fool. Now you hear Minister of Government for Information coming out to spew what is spewed today, and you hesitate. So I think if there is admission that somebody is in charge, we want to see that person in charge act on this criminality. And the responses to this should be unequivocal. There's no qualification to what this admission should be. Should be, we are going to act on this, it's unacceptable, and we are going to take action. And we want to see nothing but action. Action across the trail of torture. That's what we're asking for. Gabriel, you probably will tiptoe and come to our party headquarters and see the files and files of victims that have come to us to offer them pro bono to go to court and demand for justice. In my constituency, I have more than 30 victims of torture one of the young men was shot. Up to now, a bullet has not been removed because it is being monitored until it reaches a place where they can remove it. I've been treating victims of bullet wounds in my constituency, known to the police. They have even never come to them to ask of them what happened to them. We lodged complaints to the Human Rights Commission. I saw the chairperson warning the opposition of trying to paint a bad image of the army. I said, my foot, it is a chairperson of a Human Rights Commission? Does she even understand the extent of her duty to citizens? That's the kind of tragedy this country is facing. So a victim of torture ends up in the hands of a judicial officer, complains that, look, I can't even stand. I can't walk. My wounds are fresh wounds. I don't even have my attorneys before me to defend me here. I can't enter plea. I can't take plea and say you must, and you must go to prison. What is happening to the spirit of the country? So this is not politics, it's humanity. Because between me and the good major, we can have sharp disagreements. We can be disagreeable politically. We cannot be disagreeable about human dignity. Lest we say that we have lost our sense of humanity and our sense of understanding and our sense of sensitivity to each other.
Gentlemen and our dear viewers, it's time for us to take a break. And you can contribute to our conversation. Use the hashtag #TheBigDebate, and we will be able to see your conversation. After this break, we will continue the discussion.
As we embark on a journey to realize our full potential, we all need expanded minds and limitless possibilities. We need to be accurately informed. CTV is your growth partner. With reliable, in-depth news, we tell the story from all perspectives. We bring you the story in real time. Catch our comprehensive daily bulletins in Juba Egolodie at 7 p.m. and PM edition at 9 p.m. CTV, don't blink. Start your day fresh with TV unlike anything you've seen before. Wake up with Sunrise at Sea for your daily dose of freshly cut stories, trending online discussions, self-care, and constructive conversations. No topic is off limits. Watch Sunrise at Sea every weekday at 7 a.m. Now showing on CTV. Don't blink.
We entertain you. Ngawe tukuwata. Amanya shame manja omobwa President Birabiri Mokaga akabone record. Nanga wento na Aliya Nafuka, you can call me Aliya One, but tikutemo olwaleero. Naye tubasuubiza ntugenda kubanga tuli mu bitu ebyenjawulo. Ani yayambadde obulungi. Kakoye ki akazze ku mulembe. Ne gown ya black erina tiara ya black. Tiara. English of my kind. Tiara. I feel the beat. You feel the beat? Yeah. Show Bajita situations go ground. This is a professional yako. Vera Coco CTV totally. Don't blink.
Now showing on CTV. Don't blink.
Welcome back from the break. Thank you for staying with us here on The Big Debate on CTV. I'm your host, Igoma Gabriel, and today we speak about torture and the human rights situation in Uganda. Our two guests are the Honorable Mathias Mpuga, the leader of the opposition in Parliament, and Major Paula Awich, who works at the NRM Secretariat. But he's served in many capacities. He's an expert on human rights. He's served at the UN on a number of committees of the UN. In the first segment of the show, we had both gentlemen give their position on the current situation regarding torture. And, well, we left off when many questions were being asked about government's response and, you know, what the victims should do. Well, the opposition has a platform, and in this whole conversation, there's been criticism of how the opposition has used the platforms available to them in order to resolve this issue. In fact, some of the criticism has gone in the direction of saying the opposition, other than solving the problem, is using the prominence of the issue on torture to gain or score political marks. Well, as the leader of the opposition in the 11th Parliament, what are you doing? Yes, you talked about submitting names and what have you, but what's being looked at is your action of walking out, your plans to censure a minister that you know are being looked at as these are political. They are leading nowhere.
You know, Gabri, is it that you're saying I am a religious leader? I am a politician, and the space available for me is to use my political platform to defend justice, to defend civic space, to defend civilization, and use all avenues at your disposal to do it, including a walkout. It is acceptable in civilized nations. It's one way of exhibiting and showing displeasure about the state of affairs. And it's because Ugandans are used to other means of expressing displeasure, fighting. You know, if you've tortured me, I should go home and pick a panga and run after you. That's not the way we conceive this obligation. In Parliament, the space at Parliament is guided, and that space is regulated. What you do with it must be within the realm of the rules. And the rules do not bar us walking out if we sense that we need to express ourselves. One of the ways of expressing displeasure in an individual or a group, but a person that has abdicated responsibility, is to seek to censure that person out of that responsibility. And the rules are very clear. Rule 109, Article 118 of the Constitution, that if you believe a minister has not discharged their duty with the honor it deserves, they have abdicated public responsibility, public duty, the duty to care, the duty to discharge responsibility, they can be censured. So there's no legal bar to what we are trying to do. It's within that space. And we are not saying that these options we have taken represent a closed shop. There are so many options at our disposal, and the Parliament is not closing after the 2 weeks we shall be out. But I can tell you why the debate rages on, because that decision has really impacted. It's the reason. If it was not impactful, you will not be getting daily commentary in print and electronic media on the airwaves of every radio and TV station. In fact, the reason why it's a topical issue right here, because it has actually caused the impact we desired.
Honorable Mpuga, you demanded a statement from the minister. The minister gave this statement. The opposition was absent to debate and challenge the statement made by the minister.
My statement on the record of Parliament, I never asked for a statement. The statement was the insistence of this Right Honourable Speaker. I demanded for action.
Action.
We have had enough lies there. In my statement on the floor, it never included a desire of a statement. So if the minister brought a statement, I have seen the statement. it is as flat as the former statements given, so it was inconsequential. Our demand is still action, and that action does not lie in the statements. The statements can be made everywhere. It would even have issued it on social media. It was adequate. It did not have to occupy permitted space. Because when he came, again, he was accusing victims. He was again saying, you see, you know, you see. Don't remind us about the law. We know the law. We know the legislation against torture. The president made a statement to say torture is not acceptable. And I'm saying the space for the president is statement and action. He made a statement more than 6 months ago. So are we saying those who are torturing citizens are sneering at him? That they never heard his statement? They are not aware that he's the commander-in-chief? Those who, when he was making the statement? I bring back the same question. Is the president also the commander-in-chief of those fellows? So that space for him to make statements and go home and remind us through his ministers that, you see, even the president made a statement, that space is not for him. That space is for ordinary citizens. The space available for the president and the commander-in-chief is action. And that action should be a follow-up to his statements. And the question of the day, if the Kakwenzas and others are being tortured after your statement, who is in charge?
All right. Major Wich, there have been responses from the opposition in Parliament. Your assessment of the effectiveness of their methods?
I like to comment about the effectiveness of their methods, but also I would imagine if you ask me as government, what is it? Now, about
well, he says government is responding, government,
yes, about the effectiveness.
Their methods are effective and basically causing government to shake.
About the effectiveness of the opposition, of course, by the decision that they took, they think it will give a desired goal. But my view is that if I was in the opposition, I would have stayed in the House, discussed, argued with government, paying government. By the way, opposition is a constitutional thing. It's meant to give the alternative view. So I would have stayed inside. Because if I go out, then I don't have representation of my people inside. But if they think it can give a desired goal, that it can penalize government enough, then the option is theirs. But I would have stayed in, articulate the issues of the people, pressed on, and get a desired result. But I want to say that when laws are made by government, in most cases laws, of course you have option of private members' motion, but most laws are made by government because it has to, even if it is a private member's motion, it has to go through procedures like financial implication. So by wide and far, laws are made by government. Therefore, when you make any law, you presume that it will work well. But sooner or later, when you put it into practice, you see cracks. For example, now, we are seeing that even in the presence of the Anti-Torture Act, cries of torture continue. Cries. So, now, if this is the case, my first landing point is, how do we see gaps there? Especially a complaint mechanism. 2, is there in the law a strong position that government should move on a motion of its own? Is there compellability for government to move on a motion of its own? If not, it should be. It could even be brought under regulations because laws, as you know, are operationalized through regulations. So there should be a point in place where government should move on a motion of its own. The other thing is that government, much as training has been done, but for investigators in particular, investigators should continuously be trained on information gathering. Remember, the information gathering for investigation is for me and you. Why? It is targeted to be used in courts of law. No investigator investigates for his own consumption. all investigations are supposed to lead to courts of law because a suspect must be brought to court of law. So they must be trained to how to get information in a humane manner without torture. The other aspect is that instruments of investigations.
I thought you already said that they've been trained.
On human rights. I'm talking of investigations. On human rights is what I said. Furthermore, equipments for investigations. Of course, you heard we talked of
from the
cameras.
description of some of these victims, the equipment being used for investigation.
They have spanners.
Quite rudimentary.
That's what I'm saying. That we should continue to invest in methods of training investigators, which deals in humane way. Two, we continue to invest.
The methods being used currently, how did they find their way into, your agencies?
Which method?
The ones that you're saying we need to move away from.
No. Already we started from the premise that in the media there is evidence of torture. So from that, without even further going deep, we are saying accepted at that level, what do we do? So what I'm saying is the state, the actors need to be trained in methods of investigation. The investment in investigation, we are putting the cameras. You heard the president talk of chips in cars and motorcycles and others. So that information...
One of the things that the public is waiting for is, for these cameras to be able to capture state agencies as they do some of these wrongs. Because even when you see, people being recorded, being beaten outside their cars and things like this, it's never from the cameras. It is from, citizens using their phones.
What I'm saying is, for example, in the case of Masereka, which was accused of being ADF, if you wanted to produce him in court for treason, okay? Because being with ADF, one of the charges could be treason. Now, if you wanted to charge him for treason, and you have good method of investigation, because you're going to bring him to court for treason, and you need evidence. So that is what I'm saying. We need machines, we need equipments, we need investigation machineries that can get this information from this man and bring him to court. In that way, we avoid crude method which leads to torture. And it's a continuous process. So I'm saying laws have been put in place. When you subject a law into operation, you see cracks, you see lacuna, you see gaps, and therefore you need to reinforce it. And remember that Masereka is a case. You don't assess government by a case. Today is Masereka, tomorrow could be X or Y. That's why we need a measures in place, so that one case is an eye-opener for the rest. That's why I'm saying, to me, the solution, because you have asked the solution from the opposition, I'm telling you solutions by government, okay? I'm now saying you ask solution what opposition thinks is a solution. I am replying to you what is the solution for government. That is proper training for actors who are involved in investigation machinery, because they need, the sole thing is you are accusing Masereka of treasonable acts, and you are not going to take him to your house. You are going to take him to court for treason. So what information do you have to pay him?
Training, investigations, get the correct equipment. Those are some of the things that need to be put in place.
If you're going to bring him for treason, you have got the information without necessarily torturing him.
Because of where we find ourselves, the opposition says they are going to censure the Minister of Security. Is this, in your view, going to be effective? Or even possible?
Now you're asking my view.
Yes, your view.
Because this is not the position of government or position of party. My view is, and if I was to advise opposition, is that censuring a minister, of course you would have sent a message that if you relax in your work, you get a penalty. That is the message you're sending. But in this particular circumstance, you're not even sure about whether the actors under the mandate of the Minister for Security. Because if they were police, that is another domain, that's internal affairs. If they were soldiers, that is Ministry of Defense. So you are actually going to try to pin somebody outside this docket. It is only if you had evidence that they were IS operatives, because that is the mandate which falls under the minister. But even then, the democratic processes in parliament is by majority. And as it stands, the opposition are in minority. It would be difficult to sail through unless they want to make a statement. If it was, I know for a fact that a torture to any right-minded Ugandan is a rallying point. But I do not see, at the way it stands, that it can be rally enough to win sympathy from the majority MPs who are pro-government. So, since the opposition know that government does not condone torture, at least as a government policy or philosophy, disregarding, not with whatever the minister said, therefore, we could only zero the debate on the query as to why the commander-in-chief is not acting. We could, and all of us are saying, please, let's do something about it. But the idea of a censure needs a lot of evidential matter. You need to, in my opinion, you need to squarely put it in the docket of the minister of security.
Well, now that you've asked the question, do you have any idea why
Which question?
Why the commander-in-chief is not acting in the way expected?
No, I've not put a question. I've simply referred to what Honorable LOP has said. Its debate was, is there a state within a state? And this state within a state, or a state inside a state, the commander-in-chief has no power. That was his query.
Yes.
That we have a state, but then there's a state inside.
Yes.
I answered that by saying, no, there's no state within a state. Power belongs to the people. We seek it every 5 years, and we have got it. And we have an executive. I only said that these actors are always there. We don't live the Owen ideal utopian. And that is why many years back, the law envisages that these people will be there, hold them liable. So I'm saying we should now pursue to say, can we act as a country? It is non-partisan in my view.
Okay.
In my view, I would be really sorry if any partisan argument comes up over torture. That we NRM condemn torture? No. There's no partisanship about torture, no doubt about it. It's a question of what do we do now?
All right, then from what you've just said, is the answer to that question that the commander-in-chief is commander over even these errant officers? Because it's part of what he asked.
He is the commander, and he commands them.
All right.
Yes. Maybe the point now is, these actors, these errant actors, how does what is it within the attention of the commander-in-chief? If it is, what is he doing? If it is not, how do we brought complaint mechanism? And that's why I'd said, under the law, we should check again. Is there a provision where the state should move on a motion of its own?
All right. Honorable Mpuga, you haven't been judged, quite nicely when it comes to the plans to censure a minister. And yes, Major Awich actually echoes the words of the Minister for Information that it doesn't even seem like it's the correct minister that you are censuring based on the claims that are being made.
You know, I'll begin with a seemingly light note that in one of the conversations about torture and the tools that they are using, a friend said perhaps the construction department of UPDF is in charge of, because they have spanners, they have, shovels, they have probably the unit in charge of construction. The one
in one of the accounts, somebody speaks about a small bag of cement being used.
Yeah, that's right.
And I won't say how it was used according to that account.
Yeah, I mean, if you interact with Kakwenza and give them an account of the cold room in which he was tortured for 2 weeks. We had to stand and dance and do this. Horrible. And you imagine what some of these people that have been charged with duty think about others, whether they actually think that others have a right to live. That said, the censure motion is not about numbers. It's about what we think is wrong and right. We could have censured 5 ministers at a go. We could have begun with the head of state for abdication of duty as commander-in-chief, because command goes with control. You could have said that the commander-in-chief is no longer in control, and therefore his situation of not being in control endangers citizens. We have a fair understanding of how the state plays, and to the viewers, we're in Parliament. If it was our choice, we could have censured the entire front bench. You had...
Well,
I'm saying
I'll go to the direction of, so it's mainly a statement that you're making.
A statement which you want to deliver on, that you cannot get away with negligence. We know the degrees of culpability in this negligence, and one by one, we shall go for these individuals. And for all this we are doing, we are saying somebody must take charge and full responsibility. And I'll ask the good major. You're saying we do not know whether they were soldiers or what. You've been in Uganda, I'm sure you've not been in exile. You have seen gun-wielding goons, not in uniform, no number, hooded. So do you want to advise viewers, who are they? So that we can know which minister to go for.
One viewer has actually asked that question, and if I may just read it the way it is, and because of the way the question was sent to the platform, probably the viewer does not want their identity disclosed. The
for
question
fear
here
of a
is,
spanner.
Ask Major about who owns the drones and who are these untouchables that drive around kidnapping Ugandans.
Yeah. So for you to advise us, which means to censure, first tell us who is the owner of the drones. Who are those fellows? I saw some of them in elections in sandals. Some of them in their T-shirts brandishing, machine guns. Who are they? You probably a good source of which better means of censure, now that you don't think it's the means of security.
You see, first to the censure is that I was saying I have a fair understanding of the procedures of Parliament. You may not go to prove beyond reasonable doubt, but you have to give enough proof to implicate
leave that to us.
Okay?
Leave that to us.
But he asked me. So
I'm answering you that be sure we know what we are dealing with.
So that's why I was answering him, notwithstanding what you know, because he asked me
to who these people are.
Oh, the drone?
Yes. And he's even given other examples that have been, never denied. People in plain clothing coming out in public, sometimes wielding sticks, other times machine guns, and operating in a place where they're uniformed personnel who say nothing, who don't even stop them or anything. And it seems like, yes, whatever is going on is known and accepted.
And I was commander, those goons, for lack of a better word.
I had earlier on said that in all state operations, which is investigation, arrest and investigation, which can be done by military intelligence, which can be done by internal security, which can be done by internal security investigates but involves the police, which can be done by police CID. Now, the operation procedures are always determined. Most investigators move most investigators even double as arresting officers move in plain clothes. However, the instruction is always
wield sticks that they can use.
I'm not aware about that.
And they go around shooting everywhere.
No, you haven't seen those images at all?
In fact, it ended during the Kiboko stroke, Kiboko something long ago. But what I'm saying is that the operational procedures is when you are dispatched from an office, you're given a movement order in plain uniform, in concealed civilian cars, and that is what is termed as drone. Now, when they go, they have a letter authorizing them for that operation, okay? Ordinarily, they should even identify himself to the person he is arresting, that I'm so and so, and I'm taking you for querying. So, since we have investigating agencies, sometimes I may not know that this one is actually CID or this one is a CMI. But they are units as by law, and they are given orders written whenever they're going for such, with operation order to go and carry out that. And they're supposed to identify themselves to the arresting, the person being arrested. So because of this concealment in civilian cars is what is termed as drone. And I think the kamunye that is being used is mainly because sometimes you find the officers involved in the operation, they are in a reasonable number, like 4 or 5, okay? And including the number of the suspects that they are going to arrest.
And they are hooded. What is the hooding about while carrying out a public duty?
Hooding?
Why do they hide their faces?
No, I haven't seen that hooding.
You probably, well, we'll come back. We'll come back from whatever.
I haven't seen the hooding. But as I said, these people live with authority, with an authority letter.
So the commanding officer can be traced, is what you're saying. The person who gives the order can actually be traced.
Yes, because they are lawful operations. Okay. They are lawful operations, lawful investigators.
Which goes back to a question that we asked earlier. Therefore, are there cases where the state has found it necessary to actually find these people and hold them to account?
I already said the need for a motion of its own. That is what I said earlier.
So the direct answer to that is no, but it will happen.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, that even as we talk, since this is a public domain, there must have been already a motion of its own, which will happen.
Okay.
So I had said, if it comes from the victim on a civil claim, we ruled out here in our opinion that a criminal claim is the unlikely, okay? Because if a criminal claim, you are supposed to go to Kireka, and it is the same Kireka that released you, then it is not sensible. So we now said, in the event that a civil claim is not made, a motion of its own in this way, I mean, government should move on a motion of its own. This is already public outcry. And I'm sure as I talk, it must be in progress.
All right. Dear viewer, would like to thank you for your interaction on social media. Just remember, use the hashtag #TheBigDebate so that we're able to see your questions and your comments. And let's keep the conversation going. I'm looking at the time here, and we actually have to start looking at, some of the solutions. And I'd like to bring this to the Honorable Mpuga. Earlier on, Major Awich, stated that the two things they need to do is train how to investigate and other things, but also, acquire, equipment that can be used for investigation.
Not the construction equipment. Construction equipment.
Not the one that you say has been borrowed from
construction equipment is not instruments of investigation.
Gabriel, in 2011, why General Museveni was justifying his continuity despite visible, obvious exhaustion, was to modernize the army. And you also are aware that the defense budget,
Parliament did appropriate quite a bit of money.
Exactly.
In order to
and for the last so many years, it is the biggest. It consumed the biggest share of the national budget. The question of the day, that what did we do with our you know.
Officially, it has been, you know, infrastructure that has been taking the largest share.
I'm talking about defense, because whereas on the face it is infrastructure, actually leases the biggest go to defense. I know that for a fact. It also gets supplementaries, and you'll never find it with unfunded priorities. You'll find, that's why you have so many unmet promises of roads that, bridge that, but the entire defense budget is released for the bigger part. Very rare. If you find unreleased, it will be pension of former ISO, former ESO, but in terms of operation, the recurrent, it is entirely released plus supplementaries across the financial year, and this is the outcome. So it's not true that defense is lacking capacity in terms of budget to undertake training. If you look at the enormity of resources expended, for example, in recruiting ragtag, you know, people, you know, defense that, LDU that. You remember General Kaihura saying that he had recruited 11 million, how did he call them? Crime preventers? What was he up to? And he was doing that to justify expenditure. He was either a money launderer or actually a liar, a fat liar. But public funds were spent.
Crime preventers were brought to operate during
11 million.
The election.
So we are talking about the kind of fallacies and fraud that has been carried out in the name of modernizing the army, and which is why it's not one of the gaps. The whole idea is that the country needs to debate whether there's an attempt at a power grab by men in uniform, so that in a way they alter the structure of the constitution, which my brother has been reminding us that the constitution and the people reign. To say the military reigns.
All right.
We need to reign into the desire,
yes,
the appetite of the military to go for a power grab from the people.
Okay.
We saw it during the elections. It continues through. You know, you remember the actions of people like Mr. Napoleon in Kalangala, brandishing power, arresting civilians who are going about their campaign, the shooting by the military in Masaka, the shooting of journalists by policemen that have never been prosecuted, and they have been reported. You know, let me tell you, brother, there was a police RPC in Masaka called Abaine. I reported him to the police authority for an investigation. He commanded a police group, jumped over my fence, threatened all my cars, you know, shot at my dogs, and I gave evidence to the police authority. They have never moved on him. The last time I heard, he was moved to another place. The journalist who was shot from Masaka in Chabakuza, you know, the young man, same person. He actually did it himself. I was around. These have been reported. No action. What is the meaning of complicity in crime? So these are really actions. So the issue is we do not have absence of potent legislation, municipal and international. All we do not have is political will, because those who are supposed to brandish and show will are beneficiaries of this crime. The prosecutor's court benefits from crime, and therefore it abates it. So we must crawl back on the powers of a particular class that wants to take benefit of crime.
Major, which do you want to respond to that? Because those are very strong statements.
Yeah, my response to it is that crimes keep changing nature. The sophistication of society leads to higher crimes and new methods of crime. And I also like
what we hear, crime is becoming sophisticated.
Which?
The methods, no. You're saying that crime is becoming more sophisticated. From the accounts we are seeing here, the methods of extracting information seem to be going the opposite direction, getting more rudimentary.
Yeah, that's why I already gave my solution to move away from that. Training and equipment. So I just like to say that the investigators, much as some tend to be overwhelmed, or some tend to be overzealous, or some tend to have the capacity to investigate, all we should know is that whatever information is got for investigation is for the consumption of courts. And all this is for me and you, because you can be a subject of crime, a victim of crime. I can be a victim of crime. Investigators will come there. So we need their training, we need their capacity. The information being got, as I said earlier, is not for anybody to take at home. All informations are got for purposes of court, to prevent crime. So officers who get excited, officers who show incompetence, officers, they are actors in their own, not government policy.
All right, and where those same actors, complaints are there against them, in some cases we've seen the same being promoted even before those complaints are addressed. Doesn't that, speak negatively to the response or the, care, awareness, and reaction of government?
It does, but then for me to venture into that, I need to have the specific facts of a particular complaint. I've had Honorable say about the one he raised. I don't know. I need to inquire from the other party what happened. But
they even came to me, wasted my time, almost 6 hours taking my statement, including statements from other leaders who were brutalized at his command. Nothing. The last I heard is RPC somewhere in West Nile.
So those are case-by-case facts that I need to lay my own on. For example, if you tell me, Mr. X...
The examples, that have been in the public domain are many, and there may not be a need to go to each one of them, but broadly, if there are complaints against certain serving officers, these complaints have been made officially, and the same officers, before those issues are resolved, are promoted. What does this say?
No, but let me say this also. You know very well that in UPDF, court-martials has been very biting, to the extent that the public was crying about firing squad.
Would you like us to go through the caliber of people that have been presented to the court-martial?
They are the perpetrators.
Because
they are the perpetrators. They are the shooters.
For example, people who
they are the shooters.
Complaints about in relation to human rights. Which ones have been presented before the court-martial?
What I'm saying is, if you look at the court-martial, how it has operated, there was a case in a Leptong. There have been cases in Gulu. I think there are cases in Masaka, I remember, and many cases. So, actors who identified in violations have been done with, in the court-martial.
Major, you remember the gentleman who commanded the Kasese massacres? Do you know whether he's in somewhere in the court-martial?
Oh, well, that particular facts, I think you are referring to your colleague who is in Parliament.
Is now in Parliament with you?
I'm asking whether that action was acceptable and it is part of the culture of APDF.
I'm not conversant with that facts, but let me say with the police, you recall that there are officers who were alleged to have been in violations during the Kayura time, and some are in jail up to now, And that was a time, it took time for the commander-in-chief to realize, and that is when he came up with the pronouncement of weevils penetrating police. Yeah. So these actions was taken. It is unfortunate that sometimes it takes long to notice this, but surely action was taken. In the case of the Kayura officers, they're still in jail up to now. Others are on bail, but they spent a long, long time there. So this is to show that there's no condoning, there is no deliberate act to sanction torture or indiscipline. In the army, there are court-martials from unit, brigade, court martial, division, and they are active to date. No soldier can do that
And
walk
you know
away.
the people in the court martial now are not boys for putting on beret.
No, but they are soldiers, serving officers.
But you find it legitimate to have somebody in the court martial because of having a beret?
That's another debate.
You are trained as a soldier and a major.
It's a matter of
Is
law.
that part of your attire?
I don't want to go into that, because if I go, I would argue, I mean, for those who said, for example, if you are found or if you are caught in possession of, in contravention of service offenses or in the military source, and it is listed under the law. So, but now that they're in court, it will be now court to say, no, this is a wrong charge, because the prosecution will bring its case. But I don't want to go into that area of whether or not they are lawfully there, because they will defend themselves anyway. And if they are not, I think it will be publicly seeing justice being dispensed.
So defending themselves after a year.
Gentlemen, we have to start.
I'm more concerned with officers being punished or being held accountable. So for now, I want to leave the civilian actor out. I want to see police officers in violations or army officers and men in violation. What is the status quo? What is done?
All right. And I believe that's what, has been said on this show, that action, what the public would like to see is action. Well, in the Constitution, there is an institution mentioned in the Constitution charged with, monitoring and promoting the observance of human rights, Major which did mention it earlier on, the Uganda Human Rights Commission. In the whole of this, what role can the Uganda Human Rights Commission play?
You are being futuristic. Just ask, what are they doing? Probably on another day, you would ask one of them to join a panel discussing such matters.
We actually considered that, but yesterday they were barring one of their commissioners, who unfortunately...
Father Lokodo.
Yes, Father Lokodo, and therefore they were not available to be here today.
Yeah, because the question of the day is that for all that is going on, between 2019, when acts of torture were most pronounced, throughout the election period and after the elections, you ask them, how many military officers, police officers have they summoned to answer to torture? How many safe houses have they visited to ascertain the conditions of victims? Have they been to Makinde military barracks to see how young men have been incarcerated there years without charge, to really give the public wind of the nature, the despicable nature of human rights? The last time I saw something from them was a statement from the chairperson. In another jurisdiction, they should have resigned. She was actually acting before even investigating, and she was in a way saying some people actually are guilty. For a chairperson of the Human Rights Commission, before even establishing the complaints that the public is crying out for their intervention and saying, some of you are hell-bent on tarnishing the image of the UPDF. Then you ask, has she even taken enough time to read what Article 52 talks about the responsibility, the duty of this commission to the citizens, and in the duty they have in protecting the entirety of Chapter 4 and attendant rights therein and without? Then you get the sense that perhaps this agency either has lost direction, maybe to borrow the solutions of Major, they need retooling.
Well, can I say something about the chairperson of the commission is new, and probably the training.
Is she new to knowledge and the circumstances of the country?
Can I say something?
All right.
About
yes,
human
Major
rights? Now,
yes.
what I can say about you, I have been with the United Nations Human Rights for 8 years in Geneva. I remember, and I know for a fact, that there is a ranking system, because under UN human rights, Uganda Human Rights Commission is categorized as independent national human rights institutions. In some countries, they call it ombudsman or ombudsperson. Now, the
ours has the ombudsman is on the other end, the inspectorate.
Yeah.
Of
Now,
government.
they're supposed to be independent, impartial. In fact, if the government of Uganda appears before UN Human Rights for examination, Human Rights Commission is not part of government. In fact, they are part of civil society. They're part of civil society. Now, they're supposed to be impartial. Now, but when I was there, the Uganda Human Rights Commission was ranked in category A. And that was when the
How long ago was this?
When Sekaja was a chairperson. So I don't know whether the leader, the head goes and the structure remains intact. But it was category, and category A under UN Human Rights system is the highest category. It was doing well. I don't know what it is now.
But you agree with us that just Sekaja was really sui generis in her methods of work?
Yes, but what I wanted to say is, for me, as government, is that systems are put in place. Human Rights Commission is there. And except for now that I'm not sure about their record, I know in the past they have awarded damages against government for actions and omissions of police, military officers, and they have been paid. Now, as I said earlier, when you put measures in place and you put laws in place, soon down the road, you find challenges. So if the challenges are that their competency is in doubt, let it be. Then there should be a remedy. But for me, is that a system was put in place. And this now shows the spirit, the spirit of government, that a system is put in place. If there are challenges there too, then it's another subject, another matter. But it is in place. And at one time, as I said, the ranking was, you can even Google and see now the ranking, maybe. And if the chairperson thinks it's unfair, I do not think Geneva would be unfair, because they would put you at your ranking. They have systems of checking. And the category said you're either in C or D or whatever it is, but they are used to be in A. But what I want to pick here or emphasize as a point is that measures had been put in place, right from the constitution to the body, to the funding. I know they will be crying for inadequate funding, but government provides money. Now, about the competency, there we are. I think they make report to Parliament. I think I'm sure about it. So it is Parliament eventually which has the ultimate responsibility to scrutinize their report and to hold them in check. And that is the time the leader of opposition would be right-handed, because they will report to you.
I am there.
They report to you.
And I'll tell you, they'll have to answer to their inertia.
But government has done its part.
All right, we need to bring this to a close, and I'd like to ask both of you, good gentlemen, to give your parting shots. Honorable Mpuga, Parliament has made a decision, for these issues to be, forwarded to the Human Rights Committee of Parliament. Do you expect a positive outcome out of that?
I did not participate in that decision. And so I am not competent to comment about it.
Okay.
I'll only evolve and defend the direction I'll take, because that parliamentary decision does not offer a legal bar to other options, which I will present with my team to Parliament.
All right.
So I don't think it's fair for me to start commenting about it when I was not part of that decision.
All right.
Yep.
Your parting shot, sir.
Initially, thank you, and thanks CTV for this beautiful initiative. I hope CTV grows to even bigger and bigger heights, but critically become a center of airing out citizenry, concerns, and expand the civic space that apparently is shrinking progressively. And therefore, the media is part of the civic space we must all defend, must summon the courage to insist on ensuring that it does not freeze, does not become smaller and smaller, to the extent that CTV will have to get approval from somebody to host me. Because when we go with this trend where the media is into self-censorship, where somebody somewhere at UCC calls in, why did you invite him? Why did he have to be here for 2 hours? Because they happen. I am aware, I've been around long enough to know that media houses are under pressure. I pray that CTV lives another day and becomes part of the defense for the civic space. And for the citizens out there, it's not about politicians alone. It's about everyone. Do not surrender. Do not surrender to politicians. Please seize your space. It belongs to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Major Awich.
Oh, of course, I join Honorable in thanking you for the invitation, but I want to make bullet points in clarity that, one, torture is not acceptable by government, by NRM government. There's no doubt about that, and it is not promoted. Two is that government is in place, the commander-in-chief is in charge, and therefore everything is in control. Three, action of individual actors in state should not be construed to be the official position of government. And finally, matters of human rights, especially rights under Article 44, is a non-partisan issue. It's not a matter of opposition, it's not a matter of NRM. It's rights, and all of us should talk with uniform voice. I thank you.
Major Awich and the Honorable Matthias Mpuga, we thank you for honoring our invitation to be on the big debate and for giving your thoughts on this very critical issue, the big topic in the country, and we hope we will be able to host you another time. For your dear viewer, thank you for being a part of the big debate today. We will return next week with another edition of the show. Keep it locked here on CTV because we have other quality programming for you. Until next week, good night. God bless you.